I got, we're live. All right, so let's go ahead and I will take you through the application. So you should be seeing the presentation, Cypress, a complete solution to application quality. For those of you, if you can also, if you're on your mobile or if you have your mobile, there's a QR code. It will get you into Slido as well. You can use that or the link that is in the Zoom chat. All right, so we have a lot in front of us this evening, and so here's the main areas of focus that we're going to be going through. I'm not going to read through everything here because this is our agenda and this was published, but I just want everybody to see the direction that we're headed, and so that we can kind of keep tabs on where we're at. But we're really going to talk just high level about Cypress, where it's come from and where it's headed, and it's very important as we start looking at the concept of application quality. And then we're going to dive into some of the features that Cypress now provides in this area that we call application quality, and lets you really understand what it is and how it can be used to ensure the utmost quality within your applications. All right. So first of all, just really high level on Cypress and the company. So everybody who is joining here, I anticipate knows who Cypress is. Many of you, most of you, if not all of you, are Cypress users and have used Cypress at one point in your career journeys. So Cypress is all about testing, automating, and accelerating, and that is going to be constant regardless of where we were in our past or where we are going in our future. But there's a few things that I wanted to point out that are really important to the concepts we're talking about tonight. And the first one is our philosophy of shifting left. And the whole purpose of that is as you look at the software development lifecycle, the further left that you can shift some of this capability into the development and the quality assurance aspects, you're able to really accelerate your speed at which you build and increase the quality under which you are building. And so that is our philosophy. We're looking to catch this as early in the time frame as possible because that is the absolute most efficient, saves cost, and it saves all of us time. Now, in terms of Cypress, we have a couple of things. And so just to be very clear, we have the Cypress, the open source application. Some people call it the test runner. And this is where Cypress started, and it is still the linchpin of what we provide. The Cypress test application is where you define the test. When you're using a CI, it is what is responsible for spawning all the tests and to generating the results. So it's widely used. We are still the leading 5.5 million weekly downloads, over 45,000 stars on GitHub. But in addition to the application, we have launched, as many of you know, the cloud service, which is a companion to the Cypress app. And the cloud service allows us to enhance and increase the productivity that we can offer. And that is a online SaaS service. It's offered in many different plans, starting with a free plan all the way up to full-size enterprises. And so based on what you're looking for, we have a plan that will suit your needs. And a couple more things that we hear a lot of from our users that really appreciate this is there's a robust documentation, which includes APIs to our test runner, has plugins and different recipes or examples of how you would do things. And then also we have multiple communities. We have an active Discord community, and we even provide our own training material on learn.cypress.io. So all this is available so that we can ensure that our users know the tips and tricks for how to best generate the test code, and we can all learn from each other within the community. So in terms of the timeline of Cypress and what we've provided, we started with the app, which was just the beginning, and then we moved into Cypress Cloud. And in terms of Cypress Cloud, there's a whole litany of features. In the interest of time and starting a few minutes late here, I'm going to go ahead and not show that, but we'll have some information that we can provide in the follow-up materials or in the when we answer the questions. But on our website, cypress.io, it clearly lists out all the different features that are available and the different plans and the different capabilities that you gain at the different tier levels. Once we had Cypress Cloud, Test Replay was where application quality begins, and you're going to understand that after tonight's session. That was launched in 2023. Following that, we continued our commitment to the open source community, and we continue to build enhancements and items that are being requested by our users. And one big example there is when Cypress first began, it was made very clear that Cypress, because of the architecture, would never support multiple tabs. But our community was really vocal and said there's a lot of need for the ability to do that. And so just recently, last year, Cypress introduced a new plugin for Puppeteer that allows that capability, and you can now test across multiple tabs inside the browser. And then where that leads us is to application quality. And where we're at in our journey is we are in the middle of a rapid feature release. Already have Cypress accessibility and UI coverage in the market, and you're about to understand that there's more that are coming after that. So why application quality, and what exactly is application quality? So there are many dimensions that can influence application quality. And if we open this up and I were to ask you, I would just ask the question, what is it in your mind or in your opinion that is the one biggest thing or the handful, the top three things that influence app quality? And I think one would be very common as an answer among us, and that would be, does the functionality work? And this is just the very baseline of what an application test does. You put a test in place to ensure that when you have 1 plus 2, the answer is 3. And if it's not, then something is functionally broken and needs to be addressed. But is that all that there is for application quality, or is there more to it that we need to be thinking about? And very simply, there's more to it that we need to be thinking about. So I know that it needs to be functionally correct, but how do I know that? Have I tested it thoroughly? Have I covered all the permutations? And if I haven't, how confident am I that my customers are not going to run into an issue? How does it look visually? Has it changed over time? What is my application? How is it comprised? What are the different pages? How does it flow? Is it accessible? There's users out there that require accessibility in order to interact with the site. Are you able to cater to those users and present a product that can be used by those users? And when people are using it, is it fast? Is it performant? Is it meeting the benchmarks that are needed in terms of responsiveness? Is it secure? Are there vulnerabilities that exist? All of these things are questions that really should be asked and are beginning to strongly be asked by the customers that we're speaking to. And that's why we've introduced the capability to start looking at these aspects through the Cypress application. So it does a number of things, but ultimately, I think what I would really highlight here is that it increases your confidence across everything. If you want to have application quality, really what you're saying is, I want to have confidence that my application is going to do what it needs to do in all of these areas to the users of my product. All right, so that said, application quality is a very intentional, it's a very strategic mindset. And in order to do this properly, you have to have a corresponding set of tools that allow you to be able to go in and to ensure and to have the confidence that you're compliant in these areas. And so this is the toolbox of what Cypress is extremely passionate about providing. And in 2023, it began with our release of Test Replay. Test Replay. So for those of you, many of you I've had interactions with previously, and some are aware that we have Test Replay, others are not. And so just a really quick highlight in terms of what Test Replay is. So in our application side of things, this is what's in place and has been in place since very early in the Cypress journey. Powerful built-in tools to debug test. When you run in CI, however, it can introduce things that's difficult to recreate. And then debugging failures in Flake is not always very easy. You might have logs, you might have images or videos. However, how can you really use those to quickly identify where the fault is? And so with Test Replay, it brings all of that capability locally up to the cloud. And when you're running your test in the CI environments, and there's failures or flaky tests that are occurring, you now have the capability to very quickly understand what they are, identify the root cause, and be able to fix them and get your application back into a good state. So how do we do this? Well, test replay, it automatically captures all the information that's important between the Cypress, the browser it's running in, and the test code that exists. And what we do is we take that information and we stitch it all back together, and we give you time travel capability with that. And so with that information, you can now visually see exactly what was happening at the point of failure. And you can actually have a lot more information about the failure than you ever could if you just had videos or images or log files. And so it's a very comprehensive experience, and we offer that inside of Cypress Cloud. So what does it look like? How does it work? Just a few things of an overview here. So first of all, very simply, it is a playback capability. When your test runs and it's running in CI and you're not there to watch it, you now have the capability to go to any of your tests, but especially your failed test and your flaky test, and to understand what was happening and what was involved in the test. You can go ahead, you can change the speed at which it's running. So you have a lot of controls. You can pause, you can fast forward, but you can navigate through this entire playback experience. Now, as part of that, you can also time travel. And so as you start to look at the overall test that was taking place, there's certain portions within the test where errors were occurring. And you want to understand what was the state of certain things before, during, and after the error. And that's the capability that we have with time travel. And so you can see here that the actual test is populating on the screen, and I can go and control the different views and see the information of before, during, and after. And what really blows my mind is this capability here, which is the DOM inspection. And so when we said that we gather all the information and we stitch it back together, that's absolutely what's happening and is what's evidenced here by this capability. And so on the screen during the replay, you can fully inspect and alter or modify the DOM as necessary to help you understand what the failure is and how to resolve it. And so complete control that you would have locally is now available here, even though these tests were running in CI. Your application is presenting information to a user, but pretty confident it's going out and getting that information and the data sets to display to the user from somewhere else. And so we also provide the network responses, requests, all the information that you would see in like a Chrome DevTools. It's all available to you here as well. And so at every point along the journey, you can inspect all the traffic that's going in and out to understand how that impacts or influences the testing that's taking place. Console logs, again, very akin to what you would see in a DevTools, but anything that is piped out to the log or captured there, or exceptions, all that is available, and you can review that after the fact within Test Replay. And then finally, retries. You'll notice here at the bottom, there's attempt 1 of 3. And so the question might be, why are we running a test more than one time? Well, it could be a few reasons. It could be that you have retries set up and maybe it did fail. And so you're going to retry it up until that certain point in time. And it may not fail every time. It might be a flaky test and eventually is going to pass. But we provide you the full access to be able to replay any version of the retry that was done during the test process. So complete control over all the testing that was taking place invisibly inside of CI. All right, so test replay. Few things about it. So it automatically captures all the important information between Cypress, the browser, and your test code. We already stated that, but here's the importance of that. With that information and with having the DOM information as part of all your tests, we have some capabilities now to apply some algorithms and a little bit of a secret sauce and to understand exactly what the application looks like. And we can do that by two concepts. The first concept is called a view. And a view is simply a page with a very specific URL, or it could be a component that's rendered as a component test. So if you're using a design library and you have a component that's inserted in 10 different places in the application, a single component can also be a view that you track. And then on a view, you can have multiple snapshots. And so the live DOM allows us to know from a single point in time, but then we can see changes that are made to that state of the DOM. And a very simple example would be you might have a menu and a button is clicked and the menu is opened up, or you're filling out a form, or you have a calendar input. It's all the same view, but there's different interactions that change the look and feel to some extent on the screen. We can understand all of that and roll that up and to generate a list of all the views and snapshots that exist in your application. Now, what can we do with a view and a snapshot? So with this information, we can start to understand, how does your application look? In your application, how does it flow or move from screen to screen? How is it experienced with your user base? And how does it interact with other applications or with data outside of the actual screen that the users are interacting with? And so that is the basis. That information right there allows us to offer some additional features, part of our application quality suite. So introducing UI coverage, available with Cypress Cloud. And what UI coverage is, it's a visual test coverage report for your application. And a lot of people hear coverage and they think of code coverage. And there's a lot of similarities to code coverage. However, think of this as coverage of your test in terms of what is interactive within your user experience. So if there's a button that can be clicked, are you testing that? Are you making sure that what the button can do is actually doing what it's supposed to do? So the report that we provide is based off of interactive elements in your application. And what it does is it produces a visual overlay explaining exactly what the application is tested and what has not been tested in the application. And what's cool about this one is, since we're getting this from all the data that's already in your test cases, guess what you have to do to configure it? And the answer is nothing. This is available out of the box with the data that we can get simply from the test cases that are running and from our ability to understand what your application looks like and how it flows. So let's dive into this one and give you an example. A little bit of customer feedback first. So a couple things here that did stand out that I've bolded. Getting good code coverage numbers for automation tests, it's been a challenge at times. And so if you're trying to understand the coverage numbers, is that easy to do? A lot of people we've talked to have really struggled to do that. Some have done POCs, proof of concepts, trying to get the traditional lines of code, using that to generate a coverage score and to understand areas that have not been tested and struggle with that. But this one is one of my favorites, is being able to go into the application and to confidently know exactly what's there and how to change it. It's pretty cool. It's pretty critical. And you're going to see that here in the example that I'm going to walk you through. So here we go. UI coverage, an example. Very simple. We have a login screen, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to visit the Cloud Cypress login screen. And when you go to that screen, we have a number of ways that we support you to be able to log in. So it looks like 4 different buttons that are available, and we have a link here in case you don't have an account that you can simply sign in. So pretty simple, easy to write test cases for, and I'm sure that we have everything in place and we're good to go and move on to the next part of the application. So we run UI coverage and we start looking at this and we understand, I have a click test here on the GitHub button. I've got one for the Google button. I've got one for the email button. Wait a minute. Actually, I'm not testing SSO and I'm not testing the sign up link. So that's interesting. These 3 are good. I'm good to go there, but these 2 that are now in red are informing me there is something I've actually missed there. And am I confident that when my customers use the application, they're getting the results that I would expect? And so what we provide by simply using our UI coverage is we now can determine that on this page, 3 tests are in place out of the 5, which means it's 60% coverage of the elements. Gets more fun from there though. So we go ahead and we take a look at some of our reporting screens, and we offer the ability to understand on the different pages that exist, what is the coverage of all the interactive elements that exist in my site. And if I dig into one of these, maybe the sign-in page, and take a look at what that looks like and why there's 3 untested elements out of the 5, we quickly understand by going into that page that here are the 3 things that are interactive that have not been tested, and here are the 2 that have been tested. So I've got the 2 input prompts for the username and password covered. Everything else on the page was not covered. And so maybe we want to put a test in place for the remember me checkbox. And so we would simply come here and we would create the test case. But to do that, you have to understand where it's at. Well, remember the test replay that we just talked about. You can now go up here and actually play through the different scenarios that lead you to the screen in your application. You might remember one or two of them, but maybe you forgot that there were three different ways to get to this particular page or this snapshot. And so this will help guide you through that process. And so once you look at the test replay and you understand exactly how to put the test in place, you write the Cypress test. Let's check the click on the remember me. And once that's done, it now turns to green. It's been covered, and 3 of the 5 elements have now been covered. And we will generate this data for you real time. Gonna jump through a little bit more, and we're going to transition over to accessibility. A lot of similar concepts here, and I'm going to let Mark go ahead and take over and guide you through the capabilities here.
All right, thanks a lot. Give me just a second to get my screen up here. We've got 1, got 2, all right. So yeah, thanks. So for accessibility in Cypress, this builds on a lot of what Dan already shared. Same premise of using test replay and using the tests you've already written as a way to develop insights about different aspects of your application. When it comes to accessibility itself, not everybody is familiar with this topic. So just very briefly, we're talking about building applications and web pages in ways that meet the needs of users with disabilities. There are side effects of this that are good for everybody. Color contrast is great for somebody who has like, poor vision or cataracts or something, but also really fantastic if you're out in the sun and you're using a screen in that context. A lot of other things flow out from good accessibility, but at its core, it's about focusing on the needs of disabled users. The goal of Cypress accessibility is to make it really easy to get accessibility reports based on your existing tests that you record. So when your test runs are recorded to Cypress Cloud, you're showing us your application as it appears to your users. You're showing us all of the states and variations of your different pages and components as your tests interact with them and change them. And we can perform accessibility checks on everything we see to detect problems. This also gives us a chance to compile reports and give an interactive debugging experience, so we can use all that technology to turn around and give you something where you can do a whole bunch of work in the browser to debug accessibility problems. And yeah, this uses your tests that are already written, so there's nothing extra to do to get started. When we look at implementing this with our customers, I wanted to list out like the impact that this has and the things that they're liking about it. First of all, it makes it really easy to triage and share and like recreate accessibility problems, because you can always link it back to the exact test and the moment in time that an accessibility problem was recorded. You can consolidate everything from multiple pages or components and different tests that might have done different things with them to break it down just by page. You get pre-production feedback because this runs on every pull request that you make and every test run of Cypress. And you get traceability into the underlying code changes that caused an accessibility problem. So it's easy to track back to what exactly introduced it and what the fix might be. The other great thing is this avoids flake and test failures and performance delays that are introduced by other ways of doing accessibility testing as a part of your automated suite. Everything else runs during the execution of your tests, but the Cypress system is completely passive. We actually want your tests to all be green, all fully complete, because that gives us the most data to perform accessibility checks. And then finally, people like the aspect of this where there's no manual intervention, so you do not have to train people on exactly when and how to run an accessibility check. I'll show you how it works, and we may have time to take a quick look at the live demo as well of this running in the application. But just to kind of set expectations around what this does, what you see here on the left is a report that we would maybe email to someone as something you get in a JIRA ticket, right? It's going to have this element highlighted right here, and it's going to have it grouped under a violation that is detected. And in this case, it's telling us links must have discernible text. That's what the accessibility checker found, and it's pointing at the Cypress logo here in our real world demo app. And it's telling us that it must have discernible text because it thinks it is a link. And the way that we would go and debug this is, thinking about what you're seeing. It's not an image or something like that. It's a real interactive snapshot from your application. So you can come through and inspect this and get information from the browser. What we see on the left of these three kind of blocks is the DOM that was going on underneath that image. That's telling us that there's a link wrapping an image and there's no text of any kind anywhere. The reason this is important is that the browser is making an accessibility tree from the DOM that we write as front-end developers. And that accessibility tree has no name for that link node because it's just an image that's wrapped by a link. And so when it passes that information on to assistive technology like screen readers that might say aloud what's been detected, or Braille displays that might provide information about the names of things that are on the page to somebody who's experiencing it that way, it doesn't have any content to pass through. So it's garbage in, garbage out as far as the accessibility tree goes. And if we're able to detect missing parts of the tree or incoherent wrong code that's going into the accessibility tree, we can prevent accessibility problems before they actually make their way to users. There's a really easy way to fix this. There's 6 different ways you can put a label on a link. In this case, if you just put an alt attribute on the image, that provides alternative text for the image itself, and the browser is smart enough to make the connection and say, you know what, this should also be the name of the link. It's obvious these things go together. So you'll get a good accessibility tree with the correct node there, and then you can count on downstream technologies to do the right thing with that information. You don't have to know every screen reader and every browser. Most of the time, you just have to get the accessibility tree right. And not in every situation, but in most situations, that will work for people. So Cypress is built on Axe Core, like Cypress Accessibility, which is the same library that you might have used if you used Google's Lighthouse to check accessibility, or Axe DevTools extensions, things like that. This is by DQ Systems, and they also have DQ University, where they explain accessibility violations and how to fix them. So all of that is a part of the experience with Cypress, being able to click through and go to that. So we have a couple of summary slides, but I have it open here. So I want to show you what it does now versus what was in those slides. And what I'll show you is that same thing, right? Where we say, okay, we have an element here that's focused. It's telling us that there's something wrong with this element. This is coming from a test. So for example, over here, we have the test replay, and this is all generated automatically off of the run. So clearly this button is missing text. That's what it's telling me right here. I'm going to pop it open. I'm going to print the element out to the console, and we'll validate in the browser. Yep, no text in there, just some stuff for icons. There is a space for a label, but there's actually nothing in there that's a text label. We can take this over to the Elements panel, and we can look in the accessibility tree that Chrome exposes in DevTools and verify there's no name there. So we could do anything we wanted to put a name in here, like this would be the path to fixing it. What I really wanted to highlight is how much you can do in the browser in the artifact that came from the report automatically generated, which connects to test replay, so you can actually time travel through, understand how does a user reach this state with the problematic button. And the reason that it's a problematic button is that without a name, somebody who's blind and listening to these interactions being announced doesn't know what this does and doesn't know what pressing it would do as a side effect. So I'll just highlight the 3 things that kind of stand out about this as a solution. First, it's instantly adoptable. Every team can just get this going right away when you're already recording to Cypress. Cuts out an enormous amount of discussion and stress around implementing plugins and doing in-test checks for accessibility. The performance is totally transparent. You cannot make a test any slower by turning this on. This is complete opposite to other solutions that require being in the test. So in some cases, we've had customers report 28% faster test execution by removing an existing accessibility tool. So they get their accessibility information at a higher volume from Cypress for less actual investment in running the tests and faster test results on the functional side. And then a debugging experience we just looked at, where you don't even have to leave the browser to recreate the DOM and understand the state, is pretty unique as well. So I want to be mindful of time. If we have questions, we can answer those a little bit later. but we can move on to the next section then, Dan.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Mark. I'll go ahead and take it back over.
I see Megan in the chat. Yes, get into Discord, and I'm very easy to snipe in the Discord. You can tag me with your Cypress questions. I will try to answer.
Awesome. All right. Well, the last section that we have before we get into the Q&A, so I'll breeze through this really quick and reserve the 15 minutes that we were hoping for with the Q&A. And this is the topic of governance and improvement over the test suite. And so what is this? The governance and improvement aspect is it's analytics. It's simply there to provide a look for every project that you have in Cypress Cloud. And there's a lot of reasons that you would want this. But specifically, how do my tests look like over time? And is my test suite growing or shrinking? If it's growing, is it growing at the rate that I would expect it would? And this is where the UI coverage has a big hand as well to help you identify the areas where you might have untested portions of your application as you introduce new features into the market. How long does my run take in CI? We all know speed is crucial in order to be able to quickly respond and quickly, efficiently move through new changes in the products. So it could be slow. You could also have slow tests, and if so, what are those? What are my top failures or my top errors across the entire project that I see recurringly? And it would be the most efficient use of my time to address those first, because by doing that, I can knock out quite a good number of failures or errors that are taking place. And if I do have flaky tests, and all of us do, um, what are they? What are my biggest offenders, and which are the ones that I should go to target resolving? And so we provide analytics that covers all of those and more inside of our every one of our projects. And then we also provide now coming out to our enterprise accounts reporting that's across all projects. And so the reason for that is if you are a large enterprise, you might have hundreds of projects and you don't really have an opportunity to go in and manage the program by looking at every single project. And so we can offer a view across every project that exists inside of your organization. And sometimes you need the data as well. And so providing APIs for those accounts to be able to programmatically retrieve the test data, what's passing, what's failing, what's flaky, what are the tags on those tests that are in those states. That information and more are things that we make available through an API to our enterprise accounts. And why is it valuable? If you just think about that very simply, is you want to govern the program for a few reasons. It's not just different pockets of testing that's taking place in the application, and not all the teams are doing things differently. You want to make sure that you have consistency across your organization. And as you all grow and learn, are you doing so together? Are you making sure that you're incorporating the best tricks and the best tactics, and you're keeping in lockstep as a team, not just in a silo or a small part of a team, but across your entire organization? And do you have projects within your organization that are being tested as expected, or maybe they're not? And if they're not, what are the reasons for that? And how can I come alongside and help to ensure that the resources are available and the capabilities and the tool sets are available for you to be able to do the testing that you need to do? And then, as we just talked about, how can I get the raw data if I want to merge this into some of my own reporting that I'm already putting together and giving to the C-suite or to my leadership team? Having that data that I can quickly pivot any which way I like is really valuable. So that's the importance of governance and improvement. It's not just a project level, it's looking at your entire organization and making sure that you can guide the program in lockstep. Everyone's upgrading to new versions of Cypress and taking advantage of new capabilities of Cypress. Everyone's starting to use component testing in addition to their end-to-end testing. Those are just some of the few things that are available through the governance that we can provide. And that is pretty much it, because there's one topic left, setup and configuration. I promised this in the agenda as a topic, and as we get to this, realize, it's actually a trick question. There isn't any setup and configuration, and that's the beauty of what Cypress provides and how we can provide it, is everything we've gone through in this presentation, in this session tonight. Everything can be available simply by the test cases that already exist in your Cypress environment. And so just by running those tests and utilizing Cypress Cloud, you now gain all the capabilities to look at the true application quality that you want to see existing for your users. And that is it. So let's go ahead and take a look at questions that have been entered into Slido. So Megan, if you're able to unmute,
Yeah.
I'm curious.
I am. Thanks everyone for having us tonight. Dan, that was a great presentation. Appreciate you walking us all through that. We have 21 questions in Slido. So I'm going to pick and choose some. If we don't answer yours live, we'll definitely get to it and follow back up with everybody. But there are a few here that I think would be beneficial for everybody to hear. And I want to start with this. And Dan, I'm going to pick on you first, because you are somewhat newish to Cypress's team. And I think this is a cool one we can answer from multi different views. So Mark and Eric, prepare yourselves. I'm going to ask you this one too. So when you think about newcomers to Cypress, what is something that you think is like a must-know tip or trick about how to get started? Dan, I'm starting with you.
Wow, I think so. If the question is you're new to Cypress, that means you're either new altogether to test automation or you're new to Cypress. And that might mean that you've worked with other frameworks in the past. And so that might be the first thing that comes to mind is, what is the difference between Cypress and some of the other frameworks? And that is a key question. And because of that, there just so happens to be a session taking place again next week, same time, same day, same station. And we're going to partner with Red Rover, and Cypress is going to walk through that exact question in much more detail about what is the differences between Cypress and some of the other frameworks that are out there. But I think that would be the first one that comes to mind.
Okay, awesome. Mark, you have been at Cypress for a while now. If you are a newcomer to Cypress, or you are talking to someone, I should say now, that is a newcomer to Cypress, what is some sort of tip or trick you could offer them as they get started?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. So when I started using Cypress, it was like 2018. And I didn't realize I was pretty new to web development, especially JavaScript. And I was just kind of getting my first jobs at that point. I didn't know that Cypress wraps several other libraries that are bundled with it. So Cypress assertions are coming from chai assertions. There's an existing whole set of documentation around what chai is and how those assertions work. And you can even write custom chai assertions in Cypress to do cool custom stuff to meet your needs. I didn't really know what any of that was. I just thought it was all Cypress. Even the parts that are actually like based on jQuery, and even the parts that are Mocha, like the testing framework. Because it was my first testing framework and I hadn't done any jest or unit tests or anything at all before I saw someone do a Cypress talk in Atlanta near me, I just had no idea about those separate ingredients and how they might work together. And it was fantastic when I learned like, oh, I can Google for chai specific questions or the Mocha framework and understand Cypress is providing me with these things in the browser and putting them together. But that some of the questions I had were not at all Cypress questions. They were just like, well, what can I do with chai assertions? So highly recommend just getting a quick glance at the building blocks of Cypress in that bundled libraries link, and that'll give you a much better sense of where all the pieces are coming from.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. Eric, we're going to shift to you. So I think Eric has a different perspective here too. He helps run our support organization here at Cypress. So Eric, you see lots of questions on a daily basis around Cypress and our usage. What are your best tips and tricks for getting started?
Well, similarly to Mark, I was going to say that Cypress is my first testing framework I ever used. So I was just getting into it at one job previously. And then when I was starting to come here, this was the first testing framework I ever used. So I didn't really have that prior knowledge of something else that I was comparing it to. It was kind of all new to me. So I think that's good in some ways and difficult in others. And I would say that's a common theme across other people I see. we see people comparing it to other frameworks and being like, why do you do it this way? Why do you do it that way? So I think coming in with a fresh mind is a good way to start. And kind of like what Mark said, there's a reason we bundled all of these libraries together, and making sure you understand all of them and kind of how they all work together is important in getting started with Cypress. But then another thing I do see often is the asynchronous nature of Cypress can trip people up sometimes. And if you're like a modern day JavaScript programmer, I see people struggle with like, well, why can't I just use async await or something like that? So I think it's important to remember that the way it was built very intently, and understanding all the pieces and how they work together and coming into it with a fresh mind is a good way to go about it, even if you have previous experience with another testing framework.
Nice. Appreciate that viewpoint too. I'm going to get a little bit of a different answer from my perspective. My teams at Cypress are all customer facing, and I think that is always my biggest piece of advice, is to ask others for help. In our community, I know we've pushed our Discord already, but it's 13,000 members strong. And we have a lot of active users, including myself, Eric, and Mark. You can find us all there as part of the Cypress core team. But I think utilizing community when you are in this space is huge. Learning from others, attending events like this one. I think it's an important aspect of our job to be a constant learner and asking questions, because you can never learn everything. So I think utilizing your community is a really good way to enhance your learning in this area. I think that also leads into our next question around community and support. What role does the community play in the development of Cypress? How is community support provided to new users? So Dan, I'm gonna go to you for this one. You're one of our product friends. Talk to us about how important community impact is at Cypress and how we build what we have.
Oh, good golly. I don't even.
We don't have enough time for your full answer. Just give us the TLDR, right?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. So the community is everything. I mean, we are a product-driven organization, and so our product exists because of our users, and part of that will be strong because of our origins in open source, and just the mindset that we have. But in terms of Cypress Cloud and these features that we walk through tonight, there's very vocal, and sometimes we have to talk to folks who aren't as vocal, but there's a lot of feedback out there, and that drives everything that we do. And so I mean, my job day in and day out is kind of sifting through just layers of requests and ideas, and there's so many good things. My only disappointment is I wish we could do a lot more of it. There's just so many ideas that are out there. I'd love to do them all, but that's where the ideas come from. So be involved, be active, keep sending your ideas in for both app and cloud, and I'd love to see what comes in.
Yeah, that's great. I think another thing I would like to point out is that we have our own developers out in the community advocating for things that are important to them in development and testing. And Mark would be proof of that with accessibility. I know he has given some sessions very recently at conferences around accessibility, and being able to bring it into Cypress and help shape and guide our path there is really cool for the rest of the staff to watch too. Being able to have his expertise on staff and listening to everything coming in through his perspective with his community is also really cool for us to absorb. So I think I'm going to echo what Dan said, that community is everything for Cypress, which I absolutely love. All right, so there are a lot of technical questions I know we don't have time to get to. We will provide all of those as follow-up. I think though we had one that was upvoted the most, then I don't know who wants to answer this one, so I will just let it be a choice here. Does Cypress framework provide security and privacy? You know, we can go a lot of ways with that one. So I don't know who wants to take that. All right.
I can start.
That'd be great.
So I'm not like intimately familiar with our security details, but I know we are SOC 2 certified, and we have lots of customers in Cypress Cloud that have very stringent security requirements. So we are usually able to pass like the most strict review that any customers put us through. We always work with their security people and their compliance people to make sure that they can see everything that we have. So in order to do those things, we require, a particular NDA in place, even to have the more detailed conversation to share those details with customers. We have general security stuff on our website, but the short answer is yes. Like if you're recording into Cypress Cloud, you're doing it into an appropriate environment for test data.
And I would add on to that real quick as well. I was also thinking I had the SOC 2 mindset on, but I think one other aspect here is focusing on the privacy aspect very much. So it's not just how we protect the privacy of our users in cloud and in app, but it's also about your own test data and the privacy of that data within your organization. And Mark just made a statement about test data, and that's critical because sometimes the data that's piped into test isn't, very just purely test data. Sometimes it's more of a production data, and there could be some things you have to watch out for when you do that. And so, can you do some masking and some things with Cypress? You can, but also I think in terms of how your test program is put together and your test cases are fashioned, making sure you do it and you build it in an appropriate manner is really important to help you preserve that privacy within your own organization when other people can also see, the test replays that are running.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. All right, so I would love to address the question that just came in, actually in the chat. This is something, and I'm going to say we have 2 minutes, right? And 2 minutes are not going to do us justice here on this question in particular. I know myself and Dan could speak on this next one for quite a while and what is important to Cypress and how we are moving forward. So I would love, Dan, if we could make a note, and I'll put it somewhere too, I'll paste it somewhere so we remember to get back to this one. But the question, and I'm seeing quite a few thumbs up under it as well, is what plans do we have to keep and enhance the popularity of Cypress? And do you see any tool as a strong competitor? It's a super fair question, one that we get asked quite a bit, one that we are excited to give our answer to and back, obviously, where we work, and really the path that we are proving forward for our customers. So I would love to be able to take 5 minutes if we have that next week, Dan, to talk through that one in particular, because I think it's definitely more than we can get to now in 1 minute.
Yeah, so the quick 20-second answer is come back next week, same time, same place, and bring your friends. It's going to be a more technical topic than this week, but we are looking at not only the things that are the same or different between Cypress and some of the other frameworks, but we're also looking at, what are the other tools and how do they compare from a competitive standpoint? And so this exact question here, we have strong opinions on this, and we're going to back it with some very clear data. And so just come back and we'll go through this in detail.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it will not be the same link, I'm pretty sure. So Red Rover will be issuing another page for that.
Yeah. That's going to be it. Since we're at time for me, I'm done with the Q&A. We'll follow everything up in the Slido. Dan, you wanna take us out here?
Thank you everyone for joining. Red Rover, thank you so much for hosting us. We're excited to be here, the partnership, and we're excited to come back next week and to really dive into details. So that's it. Everyone have a great evening or morning wherever you're located.